Love the picture.
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks much, Praveen. I really appreciate that. So welcome everybody. Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Praveen Varshney. Praveen, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show.
Hey, good morning, Kevin. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I want to start by giving a shout out to Noah Rosenfarb because Noah was the one that introduced you and I, Praveen.
Hmm.
And without Noah's role, I doubt that you and I would have even met.
Very
And
true.
and what a beautiful way to get connected with somebody, which is through somebody that you and I both already know and just have a ton of respect and admiration for.
Yeah.
When you meet somebody new that way, it's like you kind of the first time you connect, it's like you've known each other for years, and
Yeah.
it's a really awesome experience, and just another testament to the value of right relationships for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And if I can
And
make a comment on that, Kevin. So we got to have a sort of a pre-chat and
yeah,
learn your life and your values, that kind of stuff, and very much aligned. And so we both are connectors for good, right? And so I'm every day making connections,
yeah.
and often I just connect to people and I don't even give any context. I just say you two should meet, and generally people are like, okay. I don't know why, but Praveen's saying we should meet, and so let's just make it happen. And so they trust that they're going to get a great connection out of that connection, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah, it's been fun changing people's lives through just connections.
Well, and you mentioned the key word. The key word in that is trust, is because
Yeah,
when the people in your life that you're doing that for, they totally trust you, Praveen.
right.
And that's why.
Yeah,
And that there's when that trust is present, when there's trust in both character and trust in competence, that's what eliminates all the noise and all
yes,
that, and it just allows things to happen. It happens easily, it happens in flow, and it happens quickly too,
yeah,
you know.
agreed.
And but yeah, trust in relationships, that's the secret right there. And so
Yeah, and we know, Noah says, as they would say in his culture, a mensch, right? And so,
yeah,
he
yeah,
is very well known, respected, and so
yeah,
when he said you two
yeah.
should meet, we're like, okay, well, we got to meet, man.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, what I'd like to do, Praveen, is I'm going to turn it over to you so that we can
Yeah,
set a little bit of context here, and let's let the listeners know, what you do, what you do, who
yeah.
you serve, what inspires you most about the work you're doing and the impact you're making in the world, and also give us a little bit of the backstory about how you even got here.
Yeah, no, happy to share, and it'll lead to that, that $1 million question that you talk about, like
Yeah,
that
yeah.
door, opener connection that changed your life. So, I live in Vancouver, Canada, beautiful part of the world in Canada, and I was born in India. I moved to Vancouver when I was 5, so I've lived here my entire life. I just turned 60 recently, and life is a bit serendipitous, right? You don't necessarily plan things. Like, I mean, you told me about your story, fishing and Alaska, right, and all that stuff. So I started off as a science student because I love sciences at our local university, but I failed physics, and I'm like, this is way too hard. And I thought I was going to be an engineer, and specifically an electrical engineer. I really had no clue what that profession was about. And so I switched to business, and I became a CPA, working at KPMG for 5 years, and I wasn't really, enjoying it. I was kind of biding my time just to get my letters, the ticket, and then I remember thinking, like, when you're auditing or going through someone's tax returns, right? You're going through little pieces of paper and invoices and receipts. And I'm like, why am I going through someone else's historical shit? I want to create something and have someone go through my historical shit. Right? So, um, anyways, and then I was trying to move into the tax department of the firm to get some different experience at their time and dime,
Okay.
before I buggered off, but although still didn't know what I was going to do long term. And fortuitously, in hindsight, they didn't have much room that year for me to move. So they picked a couple people to move into tax, but not me. So I'm sitting down with a managing partner of the accounting firm, and these professional service firms, they're like slave labor, right? It's like a pyramid. They got a call to make room for people to move up the pyramid. There's only so much room. And so the magic part is like, hey, Praveen, you obviously don't want to be in audit because you tried to go into tax, and sorry, there wasn't room for you in tax. What do you want to do? And yeah, I was only like 22, 23. I didn't know anything about HR, laws. And so your natural inclination was, oh, he's trying to fire me, but I'm going to quit and not get the satisfaction of him having to fire me, right? And then I was living at home. My father was a partner at Arthur Anderson, one of the big firms back then. And he's like, well, if you quit, they don't pay you severance. And I'm like, what the hell's severance, right? And then he goes, it's employer's problem. It's not your problem. So I'm like, oh, okay. So, Friday, that was Friday morning, that initial conversation with the
Uh-huh.
magic. Monday morning, I'm back with him, and he's like, okay, you've taken the weekend to think about it. What do you want to do, right? And I go, what do you want to do? Right? I threw it back in his court, right? So I end up getting this sort of 3, 4 month working severance thing. And basically, my dad told me then, you're going to look back and say that was the best thing that ever happened to you, which it was, because it basically forced my hand to move on and basically become, this entrepreneur that I've been for 35 years.
Mhm.
So that was a very key integral point. And so when I started working with my father, who'd also moved on from accounting into entrepreneurship, and my younger brother, who's a securities lawyer, came in a bit later. But we started in the resource sector, which is a big part of the Canadian economy.
Okay.
And so literally I'm 25, 26, and diamonds, like your wife would have on her on her hand, were discovered in northern Canada. And so we have producing diamond mines in northern Canada. And in mining, when there's a discovery, there's a big staking rush, just like the gold rush. And so our little junior public company listed in Canada went up there and started grabbing land in and around where this discovery was, because there's also an expression in mining, best place to find a mine is next to an existing one, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so we end up, exploring this land that we had staked and turned it into a multi-billion-dollar diamond mine with De Beers as our partner. That mine's still producing diamonds today. So diamond mines are very rare, but that's literally how I found my career. I discovered
Wow.
a team,
Wow.
a freaking diamond mine, right? And you can imagine like the wealth creation is pretty significant when you find any kind of mine, let alone diamond mine.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
so we've always kind of worked in the mining resource sector, which is a sector that for 35 years we've been in. We've worked in gold, copper, zinc, uranium, lithium, even. Um, and then after the diamond company, we started a casino company. So you're in California, so all these Indian casinos, we helped start them all.
Mhm.
So you can love me or thank me or hate me, but it was a really interesting experience to just help all these Indian bands get out of poverty by using gaming as a way to do it.
Yeah.
And I remember I really cut my teeth as an entrepreneur then because, I was like 28, 29, 30, and I'm coming home to my wife and going, this is like serious shit. We've taken this idea, turned it into like a business with 100 people on payroll. The casinos employ thousands themselves. And every 2 weeks, these people are relying on this paycheck to put food on the table for their families. So that's like a lot of weight and responsibility on your shoulders to make good calls, right? Because if you make a bad call, you got to fire someone. It's going to impact them.
Mhm.
So, anyways, that's where I really became an entrepreneur. Very successful company, and then we started a couple of internet companies. So
Okay.
they did very well, and then that was about a 14-year run where we were day-to-day entrepreneurs running, a business. And then in 2000, we created our quote our family office because once you've got some capital after some exits, you can give it to a firm to manage for you, a wealth manager, let's say,
Mhm.
or you can manage yourself. So our full-time job as a family is just to manage our capital and our investments. And we'll do a bit of passive investing where we'll just write a check into an opportunity, but we like to actually get involved with our entrepreneurs because we can
Okay.
add a lot of value over and above and beyond a check,
Yep.
right? So often, the capital's needed, but it's that contact that you can open up a door. We talked about, networking and opening doors and
Yeah.
contacts.
Yeah.
So we'll be either advisory or on a board or part-time CFO even, because a lot of our ventures are early stage because we've been entrepreneurs, so we know that sort of area. And I like the risk reward ratio because it becomes about pattern recognition. Like you see the same issues over and over again. So it doesn't matter what industry, what size company, they got HR, marketing, branding, finance, right? And then that industry expertise is where you need to have that partner smarter than you, right? To be that dumbest guy in the room. So that's been sort of one of the secrets to our success is, we want to work with people who are smarter than us in that sector, but bring everything else we bring to the table, right, to work with them. Um, and one of your questions, what drives me is, so when we switched to the family office model, the first business we worked in our neck of the woods is called Carmana, and we built it into Canada's largest solar company. So
Okay.
it was like a rocket ship ride. It went from a startup to 75 million revenues. It was basically doubling almost every year. Public company on the Toronto Stock Exchange, 10x on the stock. And it was basically the accidental, serendipitous start to impact investing before it was even a word or a thing. This is in 2000.
Okay.
And so I ended up making it a focus for the family because our two kids were born. And that was another factor that made me want to like look at business and the planet differently.
Mhm.
And so we're quite well known as an impact investment shop because if you do good and make money, that's a no-brainer,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And no disrespect to many people that make their living in the legal industry of gambling, gaming. It just doesn't fit our values because, potentially some people are getting hurt along the way, right? And actually, literally this morning, I got pitched an opportunity to invest in a sports betting, online business. And I
Uh-huh.
just told them exactly what I just told you. I go, no, thank you. Doesn't fit
Just
our
not in your wheelhouse, not in alignment with your values.
no, no, because and the way I kind of summarize the journey is three things. Um, One, through age and experience, you learn that just because something's legal doesn't mean it's good or right, right? So we just touched on that.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
second thing was that lens of becoming a parent. I know you've got like I think seven kids and lots of grandkids already,
I
right?
do. Yeah. 7 kids and 6 grandkids and a
Yeah,
bunch of pets too.
there you go. And so you think, or at least I know I did, that how do you make the planet better for them and future generations and fix some of these freaking issues that we're unfortunately dealing with in the society that we created for them, right? This mess. Um, and then the third thing is you get a little bit older, you may think about legacy. Like what's your role on the planet? Why do you really exist? When you die, is anybody going to care? Is anybody going to show up at your funeral? What are they going to say about you, right? That whole reverse engineer to what your tombstone may say thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I just feel very honored and privileged to hang around a lot of impact people that entrepreneurs, financiers, that kind of thing. So that's what really drives me is, and it
Yeah.
may
Yeah.
sound a little bit trite, but a lot of my peer network, we basically think of ourselves as planet warriors. Every day we're
Okay.
getting out to go to battle for an entrepreneur, for the environment, for the planet, for our kids' futures, for some charitable cause, right? And we're having fun and we're making lots of money. Like it's a blessed life.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you always, I am with you. You want to do that thing that just is really in alignment with our values and
Mhm.
stuff. And when we connect with people who are in align with our values and with our interests, and then also we were talking about that trust in character and trust in competence.
Mm.
And those are kind of the four things that we need is trust in character, trust in competence, and then that alignment in both interests and values. And
Yeah.
when all of that is there and it just kind of lines up, man, magic can happen and often does happen. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I know you
so
talked about
yeah,
talked about flow. And then also like, we're so blessed like to have the lives that we have, right, and lead.
yeah.
And yesterday was my daughter's 25th birthday, right? So it's her
Wow.
champagne birthday because she turned 25 on March 25th of 2025. So I think there's
Yeah.
another word for that even, right? But we went out to like one of the nicest restaurants in the city, and after like the bill, we're like, whoa, that's a lot of money. But this is one of the things that we taught them growing up, our two kids, that it's nice to have money because it kind of gives you the lifestyle, obviously, that you want, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things you can do is you go to a restaurant and order whatever you want.
Yeah.
You don't worry about price.
Yeah.
And I mean, you look at it out of interest sake, but you don't worry about it, right?
Yeah.
And that may not seem like a big thing, but it's a huge thing because most people
It
don't do that.
is. Yeah.
And that kind of ties into my views on money and wealth, right? And so I've kind of formed this thing where I think of money as tool and energy. It's like a river. You got to let it flow. You can't dam it, block it, and hoard it, right?
Uh-huh.
And approach life from abundance versus scarcity. So I think of four different buckets. So I'm trying to make money by impact investing ethically, all that kind of stuff, integrity. and then make sure that it flows into the lifestyle bucket and is always full, so you can travel and all these do these things. And then my second bucket, I call it my charity philanthropy bucket. So I'm
Okay.
trying to make more so I can give away more.
Mhm.
And as my friend Dave Richardson, a shout out to him, he's the one who really got me thinking clearly about this. But he set up his family foundation, and he goes, him and his wife Pamela are having so much fun giving away this money with a warm hand
Yeah.
versus when you're dead and gone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
I
so
love
I'm
that. That's a great analogy. Give it away with a warm hand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, Dave, you just hit the nail on the head. Like the reason I do all this giving of charities and of time and because I get this endorphin hit and
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
great feeling. Um, and so and yeah, so that's one of the big reasons why I kind of do what I do. And my wife and I, like we've been doing a lot over the years with time and money, but now we have more time and more money to work with. So we're just doing, more. And it's yeah, just life changing, like what you can do for a person or a charity or an organization, because not everything can be solved by business, right? Some things
Yeah.
actually need more of a philanthropic, approach.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. I love the analogy that you gave, giving with a warm hand
yeah,
and also from a full bucket. Because when you got a full bucket and you got more than enough to take care of you and your own family,
yeah,
it just makes I mean, you can just give a lot more. And when I know that 12 years ago, a good friend of mine just gave me some whole new perspective because I was not really. I mean, I've been this giving guy my whole life, but for most of my life, I kind of sucked when it came to the receiving side. And God forbid that I would actually ask somebody else for help because
right.
I didn't want to put them out. I didn't want to bother them or whatever.
Yeah,
But my buddy Jesse 12 years ago was like, Kev, he's like, that feeling that you get when you give to somebody who really appreciates it. And I was like, oh man, I was like, Jesse, that is an amazing thing. You just said you get this endorphin rush from
yeah,
it. It feels that good,
yeah,
And he's like, yet when you deprive others from that feeling, that's what's happening when you are not opening yourself up to receiving and even asking for what you want. Because Kev, people know who you are
yeah,
and start expanding your receiving muscle. Let
yeah,
other people have that experience that you love so much,
yeah,
and you're just going to be able to give that much more. And
yeah.
man, that was a game changer. That was a
But
game changer.
wow, you just actually opened my eyes because like I'm the same way. Like I'm so used to helping and giving, and I think I mentioned this the other day. Like in our culture, the Indian culture, in Hindi, there's a word called seva, SCVA, which means to be of service, right? Just live a
Oh,
life of seva, right? And so I've been living this life of just service and seva forever, and it is hard to receive. But you're right, like I have reached out lots of times to get help, but I've
uh-huh.
never thought of it that they're basically feeling that endorphin hit probably that I felt. I felt.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, I have been actively engaged in this, Praveen, for the last 12 years
Yeah,
of intentionally focused on expanding my receiving muscle
there we go.
and helping a lot of other because like I found that there's a lot of other entrepreneurs who might be extremely successful at what they do, but they're like when I start talking about my oon past, they're like you just said, have I've kind of that man that hits home with me. I'm kind of that way too,
Yeah,
and it kind of helping them expand their receiving muscle, and it's a really awesome experience for everybody involved,
yeah, yeah. No,
and so.
very good point. Thank you for sharing that. And then
Yeah.
finish my bucket. So my third bucket on this wealth thing is I call it my angel investing bucket.
Okay.
So I'm one of the more active angels in our region, and I've won awards. I'm in the top like most influential people in the province, blah blah blah. But I do my angel investing not so much because I want to make money. Obviously, I don't want to lose,
Uh-huh.
but I'm trying to seed another entrepreneur or group of entrepreneurs, and also provide that advice, guidance, contacts to help them get going and hopefully become successful. So then hopefully they have financial freedom, which leads to time freedom. So now they can go fund another entrepreneur or a charity. I'm trying to replicate, multiply, build ecosystem,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then my final bucket is I call it my random acts of kindness bucket, where it's
Okay.
just, bleep off money. You can do whatever you want with it, right?
Yeah.
um, what was the example the other day? Oh, I was went to our local theater and bought some popcorn. Two young kids, were working the counter, and at the end, I'm like, "Oh, I had a big bill." I go, "Can you change this?" And like, "Fine, here you go." And then I gave them a $5 tip on like a $10 order, right? And you should just see the expression on their
Oh
faces.
yeah.
It was just priceless. They're like, "For
Yeah.
us?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's another way of kind of getting an endorphin hit selfishly, I guess.
Totally.
Right?
Totally. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so getting up every day and helping create great companies and wealth for not just myself but for others, like so investors, entrepreneurs. It's just been a lot of fun. So I know friends probably like you that are between 50 and 60. I said I just turned 60 and they've retired. And I'm like, retired to what? Like,
Yeah.
take your gifts and bottle them up and stop, right? So I know
Yeah.
I have these gifts, so I'm going to keep going. My father's 83, still works every day. So
Wow.
I'll hopefully be like him to keep going as long as I can. And some people, that's expression, oh, you want to retire so you can go traveling and play pickleball or whatever. I'm like, I already do all those things already,
I would
right?
say you do all that now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so very,
I
very
am
cool.
with you 100%, Praveen. I will turn 60 in a couple more months. And
Oh,
I'm
great.
like you. I want to be working when I'm 83, man. I want to keep doing my thing. And
Yeah.
so and just hanging out with amazing people and yeah, just seeing the world and sharing just great experiences together.
Yeah,
And
totally. And so a lot of this is a backdrop to really the question I know that this whole podcast is about, right?
yeah,
So if you want
yeah.
to pose it to me and I'll tell you my
Yes. So
yeah.
now that we've got a little bit of context set, I will. I'm going to reiterate the question around relationships for the benefit of our listeners. So, Praveen, what I'd like to ask you is, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is when I was 31-ish, a friend of mine in Vancouver, and I just met him a couple of days ago over a pickleball game. And actually, I actually, because I knew I was going to be on the podcast,
Uh-huh.
brought this up to him and thanked him for this. But his name is Graham Lee. So
Okay.
Graham was one of the first members of an organization in Vancouver called YEO,
All
which
right.
stands for the Young Entrepreneurs Organization.
Yes. Yes.
And so that organization ran as YEO for a number of years, and then it dropped the Y, it just became EO.
It's
So,
not so young anymore.
well, that's what happened. A lot of the entrepreneurs weren't young, so
Yeah.
they didn't like OEO, Old Entrepreneurs Organization. So there's no O. So I've been in the Vancouver chapter for almost 30 years. And I
Oh,
remember at the time, Graham's like, yeah, there's this new organization I'm in and entrepreneurs and I'm like, well, why would I want to join this, right? Because I'd mentioned I was, had done quite well early, a diamond mine, very successful casino company. So I felt like I was in this groove. Everything's
uh-huh. Mhm.
going smoothly, right? Then it's kind of like the glass half empty or half full. I'm like, you know what? A groove could actually be a rut. I'm actually in a rut. I'm not actually in a groove, right? I got to shake it up.
Ah,
So I'm like, okay, Graham, I'm going to join. So I joined, YEO back then. I'm a lifer now. I've been in it for 30 years, right? It's the large, for people that don't know the organization, please look it up, especially if you're an entrepreneur. So the website is eonetwork.org.
okay.
So it's the largest group of entrepreneurs in the world. There's chapters in most major cities. And it's kind of affiliated with another group called YPO, which is the President's Organization. But literally, these O organizations between EO and YPO is like the who's who in that city or business community.
Okay.
So you talk about networking and connections and like making shit happen, getting shit done, right? Like it's a powerful network. And not only has the organization been influential and instrumental for me for professional growth and development, because initially when you join, that's more what you're thinking, right? But also from a personal growth and development perspective. So I believe it's made me a better husband, a better father, all these sorts of things. And then from the business side, like I look at, some of the things I've had a chance to do or, accomplish, or even people that I've met. It wouldn't have happened if that one thing that Graham has said to me was join YU didn't happen. Like I literally do not know where I would be right now, right? Um, but just to finish the family office, so we're impact investors. We started mining, and actually, even with that, I get sometimes asked, well, how does impact investing fit with mining? Because they just think mining and resource extraction is bad and a negative connotation, right? And so I go, look, resource extraction and mining by itself isn't inherently bad. Like we actually have the life and lifestyles we do because of that. Like we have the cars, the phones, right? Everything else. So it's more in mining how you do it and how you leave it, right?
Mhm.
Um, but the third bucket of business that we're in is real estate. So for 20 years, we've been building out a fairly significant portfolio now of hotels, apartment buildings, warehouses, and all those partners I work with have come from EO or YPO. Like it's crazy. Like I would not own all this real estate that the family owns if I hadn't joined that organization.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, just like game changing in so many different ways. And then people I've met over the years, like like Richard Branson, and like just really fun, cool people like that. And so I think back to my life, this little immigrant from India, and all the things I've done in my career and people I've met. Last year, I think I may have told you, like my wife and I went to India, where I'm from, to northern India, to a place called Dharamshala,
Huh?
which is a base of the foothills of the Himalayan mountains. Just gorgeous part of the country, clean, green, beautiful. And the reason we went was to go meet with the Dalai Lama, to
Okay.
meet His Holiness in his home. We're sitting there for an hour with this lovely 9-year-old gentleman, and so again, I'm just kind of pinching myself, like, how did this happen? Like,
What
right?
an experience.
Yeah, yeah. So, and then I do want to pull on that thread a bit on the message, right? So how it started was was on the board of a charity here called the Dalai Lama Center.
Okay.
And it's not like a physical building and it's not like a religious organization. It was more about taking his teachings and getting them out there to people. So we were teaching kids through the school system. It was basically a curriculum about matters and affairs of the heart.
Okay.
The idea is when they're young to teach them about compassion, empathy, kindness, tolerance, right? And then as they grow up, become young adults or whatever, right? Violence, bullying, all these bad things don't happen.
Yeah.
And so we reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids in British Columbia where we live. But unfortunately, the charity became a victim of COVID, and we had to shut it down. So me and another buddy of mine, who I brought on as a director, who is Buddhist, we're Indian, we're not Buddhist, Hindu. But so Tenzin and I said, look, we can't let this work die, not on our watch. Okay, so let's figure out how we can keep this going because the world needs this stuff, especially these days, right? Like these poor kids in the Middle East, whatever, they're not born to hate. It's unfortunately it's taught, right?
Yeah.
It's around them. So anyways, we ended up finding an organization in Toronto that loved the work we're doing and have become our new partners to help kind of rebirth this thing. And so the trip to India was to explain to the Dalai Lama why this charity unfortunately died,
Mhm.
but then to get his blessings on sort of the 2.0 rebirth reincarnation of this to go even much bigger and more global and scale the work.
Wow.
And so I was all excited to sit down with him, and I'm like, okay, this guy's going to teach us the secrets of life and how to be happy and, all these stories and sagas and fables, right? And instead he kept repeating the same message over and over again, which I'll tell you what it was in a second. But after, we left and we're debriefing our small little group, we're like, okay, wait, is he senile? Like, did he forget he said this? Because he kept repeating over and over again, right? But basically his message was the problems in life, humanity, mankind, the planet is, we focus too much on differences when the key words are we are all the same. Okay. So we're all born from a mother. We all have the same needs and wants, right? To raise a family, educate them, right? All that kind of stuff. So you're one religion, you're another. Who cares, right? So stop focusing on differences and think about that we're all the same. So I'm like, wow, okay, that message is the message. That's how powerful and simple it is. That's why he kept repeating it, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
That
and
is
then
powerful, Praveen. That is really powerful for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, and then like I come home literally within a week or two, I'm walking down the street. I saw some fellow with some significant disfiguration right on his face, and I'm focusing on the difference. And I'm like, you idiot! Like he just told you to not focus on the differences. This guy's a human with a heart, a family. Like anyways, it's just I think so ingrained in society to focus on the
Yeah.
differences.
Yeah.
So we got to like stop that, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You're right, because we do that. It is kind of a default thing that most of us do is
mhm.
just notice for the differences.
Yeah,
And I know for me personally, like, entrepreneurs who I thought, you mentioned Richard Branson, for
yeah,
example. Some people might look at Richard Branson and say, man, that guy has done so much. And and maybe even put them on a pedestal because of that.
right.
And yet, I've never met Richard Branson personally, although I do have friends of mine that have met him and stuff and spent time
Yeah.
with him on Necker Island and all of that. And
Mhm.
and and they're just like, man, he's just such a down to earth guy.
Yeah,
And that's what I have found in talking with any entrepreneur, and regardless of how successful they are, how big of a business they run, how great things look on the outside, what you just said, Praveen, we're all the same. We're
yeah,
all doing the best we can with what we have,
yeah. Agreed.
and
Yeah,
uh, and to just have a heart to heart conversation with people, man. That is, I mean, that's good stuff, man. That is
yeah.
good
No,
stuff.
thank you. And you probably heard this expression, and so I truly believe it too. Like, show me someone who was like very kind, nice before they had money, right? And then, excuse me, after they have money, it just magnifies them. Like if someone was a jerk before they had money, generally it's just a bigger jerk, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, there's exceptions. I had one friend, like he had some early success and he basically was becoming rude. And I'm like, I took him aside, literally did a verbal, I go, like, Theo, like snap out of it. Like, just because you got extra money doesn't mean you're better than someone else now, right?
that's right. That's right.
Oh,
And just because you don't have the same amount doesn't mean you're any less worthy or less valuable either,
oh,
you know.
totally. Yeah.
And
And then,
so,
like with connections, like one of the things that if you ask anybody who knows me well, they go, Praveen, your superpower is you're really good at building relationships quickly and deeply and maintaining them on a long-term basis, right? And that's because I work at it and I have a system, right? And then raising our two kids, like we took the pressure off them on marks and we said, look, your marks aren't ultimately going to determine how happy you're going to be in life and how successful. And having said that, it's not a license to bleep the dog, but you still got to put in the effort, right?
yeah,
And they both excelled, did very well. They got into a very hard business school locally, and they're graduated now. They're entrepreneurs, age 22 and 24, which is kind of fun as an entrepreneur father to see that your kids were not only watching, absorbing, and learning, but now applying.
yeah,
But instead, we imparted on them and focused on helping them build their interpersonal skills, like the stuff they don't teach you at school that's gonna make you happy and successful, right? So with building relationships, it's as simple as learning people's stories, just having a genuine interest in them, right? And having listening with the intent to remember. And you got two ears and one mouth, so you want to listen twice as much as you talk, right? And then the world's like a mirror. What you reflect out is what you reflect back. And so if you get smile, you get the smile back,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And this is fun when I think you're like this because I think you said you have a dog, right? We've got a
Yeah.
Labradoodle, but when you greet someone, treat them like you're a puppy dog. When you come home, doesn't matter what kind of day you had, your
That's
dog's
right.
always happy to see you, like the tail's
That's right.
wagging,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
I have a friend from EO. He was my first real estate partner, and I'm gonna give Steve Barazan a shout out. He was my learning chair when I was chapter president, so that's how we got to know each other really well, and we became business partners. And anyways, so Steve, I'll just call his voicemail just to listen to his voicemail because when you get it, it goes, hey, this is Steve, and at the end it's like, have yourself a great day, right? And so there's a lot of people, and them, like like they barely have a smile. They kind of like this negative downer energy, right? And so like when you greet people, just treat them like you're a freaking puppy dog, and so excited to see them, right? Like,
That's right. That's awesome. That's awesome. And yeah, we have a Labradoodle too, and that is
okay,
totally how she is.
yeah,
I'm in the door and she's just like happy to see you.
yeah, yeah,
So
no, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and my daughter and I, we did a father-daughter fireside chat a couple months ago to 100 high school students, and that was kind of cool, sort of a fun thing to do to talk to each other, being moderated by this friend, and I was talking about with robots and AI and a lot of these things that are coming down the pipeline are already here.
yep,
A lot of traditional jobs will go away, right? But the interpersonal stuff's never going away.
yeah,
Right. You
yeah,
almost have to double down on that because it's going to be this lost art, right? Like, people don't know how to converse and have a conversation, right?
yeah,
So, yeah, it's just so really, learn as a, and one of the books I recommend people to read, aside from the classic of, how to win friends and influence people, right? But this millionaire, Harvey McKay, in Minnesota, he had a very successful envelope company. And that was one of the first business books I read when I graduated from university and began my career.
Mhm.
But basically, he talked about having it's called the Mackay 66. So he said you want to have these 66 questions that all his sales staff needed to have answers on about all their clients and the prospects, right?
Okay.
And so I was already kind of thinking that way and acting that way. I'm like, okay, here's a guy who's a multimillionaire who's basically saying, like build relationships and have a system of, how to like nurture it and build it, and it's worked for him, so I'm just going to keep going. So my database that I've built since I was 20 is my my most important asset, because I always know, like, if there's something I need help with, the answer's in there somewhere,
Yeah.
either directly or indirectly, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and so yeah, so it's been really fun just connecting for good, and then being able to like tap into those connections as well. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that is powerful. You know, Praveen, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today and just share from your heart and share from your own experience. And I'm sure there is a number of people listening to this right now going, man, Kevin, I love Praveen. I love who he is. I love how he shows up. And maybe there's some people that would like to like find out more about the work you guys are doing and all that. Is there any resource, any websites we can share along with the interview here?
Yeah, for sure. So our family office so my last name is Varshney, so it's varshnecapital.com.
Okay.
So yeah, Varshney, and then the word capital.com.
Yep.
Um, and then I'm happy to, share, like, I've helped write some books, and there's a couple of chapters from these books that I share often, and I basically write about the value of integrity and using that as a cornerstone to build a personal brand, right? And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can like help it or hurt it, right? And so I love just even talking about integrity. So I'm happy to share that resource with you. And if someone reaches out to you, you can send it to them.
Awesome.
Um, yeah, so I think it's on the website too. So, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well, fantastic. Praveen, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Um, no, I mean, other than like for you, we've had this pleasure to meet a couple times online, but I'd love to meet you in person, and then we can play my favorite sport of pickleball.
Yeah, yeah,
I've started
yeah,
that pickleball business called IPOP.fun. So we're building out courts for people to play, and there's so many reasons why I've just fell in love with the sport. Aside from it's easy and fun, it's a great way to meet people and connect. Right, we keep talking about connections, right? And so it's a very inclusive sport, age-wise, demographic-wise, and like relationship-wise.
yeah, yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, once again, thank you so much, Praveen, for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate and really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.